Welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to talk about tabs, another essential Android component. Their main purpose is to separate content across different screens. Now, there's only one major rule you have to keep in mind. The content in each tab needs to be at the same level of hierarchy. What does that mean? Practically, this means that your tabs should show things that make sense together. If it's a music app, just a random example, you might see pop, rock, hip-hop, and so on, right? If it's a store, you might see appliances, cell phones, cameras. So it's very intuitive once you consider all these examples, but here's what you shouldn't do, which is even more clearer. So say it's a food delivery app, right? And it shows Italian, Indian, and then settings. So that obviously doesn't work because settings belongs in a completely different place in the app. So that's what this means, the same level of hierarchy. Now, in general, the wireframe is likely going to show you the information structure of the app. So actually there's little chance that you're going to mess this up. Now let's talk about the design side. Tabs can be divided in many ways depending on what interests you. Now, from a navigation standpoint, they can be fixed or scrollable. Now, fixed tabs, I love them, they look great, but you're limited to 4 entries. Their width in pixels is determined by the number, and here's the math. 2 tabs means 360 per tab, because the entire width is 720. 3 tabs, 240, and if you want 4, 180 is all you're gonna get. The easy way to arrange these items in Adobe XD is to create a rectangle that shows the active tab. This is always 4 pixels tall. Input your width, say 240, and now left align it. Then center the text or the icon with it. 3 tabs means you're gonna need 3 individual text layers, and just move this bar around. Great. Now, in case we're talking about scrollable tabs, the distance from the left side needs to be 104 pixels, 104 pixels, and then your active rectangle starts. Of course, the word itself needs to be centered, so please make sure that you don't get confused about that distance. So again, leave 104 empty pixels from the left side, and then that's gonna be that. Okay, nice. Now regarding the minimum width, that's again 180. That means you're gonna get 2.5 tabs in one screen. But this shouldn't be a problem considering you wanna show the user that there are loads of other tabs. Now when you see it in action, you're gonna see that it does actually make sense as the active tab becomes apparent through a nice animation. Okay, moving along, another way to look at tabs is based on their label. It can be text, icon, or text plus icon. But as you probably already assume, you should never mix and match them. If you have 2 text labels, don't add a third one that's just an icon. That doesn't make sense. Choose one direction and stay on it. That's a very simple rule that applies just about everywhere. Now, these choices have very specific sizes, so let's see what's what. Option 1 with text labels. This is by far the most popular choice due to its size. Its background is 96 pixels tall, 96. This, of course, ties into your action bar and the status bar. The entire block on a 720 standard artboard is 256 pixels tall, and that's 48, 112, and then 96. If you choose the icon route, that uses the same height for the background, 96. The icons themselves have to be kept at the size of 48 by 48 pixels. In case your icon is an irregular shape, you can use a rectangle to guide you. Now, I'm not a fan of tabs with icons alone, as they're pretty hard to understand what's behind them. So I would personally stay away from that option unless the icons are extremely intuitive and very well known. This group is reserved for things like search, GPS, phone, Wi-Fi, and a very few other ones. Now the third option and the final one is label and icon, so text plus icon, which again I'm not a big fan of because of the height. This needs 144 pixels versus the 96 for the single line. So that's quite a big difference. You're eating up quite a lot of space. Now, indeed, it does look nice, but we're losing precious space. There's something to be said about the scrolling feature, where the action bar goes away when you scroll down, but we're not going to focus on movement because that's very difficult to add in all projects in Adobe XD. But know that it's not the end of the world if you do eat up a bit of space at the top. Most tabs show a label though, exactly for this reason, to keep it simple. But at the end of the day, it's really up to you. Now, going back to our subject, stick to text layers and try to avoid very long names. If that can't be avoided, please use ... at the end of the word, even though Google says it may confuse the user. Now, what they propose is you increase the height of the component, but in my book, that's gonna look worse. So this brings us to the state of tabs. There's two of them. Active, with that 4-pixel rectangle underneath it. Now, that usually has a color that really stands out with maximum contrast. And then we have inactive, where the text layer has a washed out look and no additional decoration, nothing in terms of the design side. Now, from my experience, most of my headers are brightly colored, so my active text label and the rectangle underneath can be pure white. Now, sometimes I do deviate and I use yellow, but only when the combination is not jarring, when it doesn't upset the eye. Now, please note that the active tabs text layer should never be any other color than white. So you can play around with the rectangle, the bar underneath, but not the text layer, please. White is usually best. Now, here's another thing. White headers aren't very common, so it may look clean, but most of the time we don't really use a pure white background. Now, I want to leave you with this idea in mind. Sometimes rules can be broken. As long as you follow the design principles described in this entire course, you can step outside the box and create something beautiful, something that's usable, no matter if you followed the material design guidelines or not. But for now, it's time for the next exercise. Please create 5 headers of your own. By header, I mean status bar, action bar, and a tab system all combined. Now, the purpose is for you to get familiar with the process of setting things up in Adobe XD and experimenting with various colors and layouts. In general, we don't work in isolated conditions. We won't create just a header. We're gonna create the entire thing. But I really want you to try this out and see how you do. So that's 5 different headers in any style you want, in any layout. For the icons, you can use flaticon.com or just take some from the internet, it really doesn't matter. This is just for practice purposes, we're not gonna use it anywhere else. Please post your work in the comments section, and ideally all these designs should be one underneath each other in one single artboard. Have fun with it, and I'm gonna see you in the next lecture.